Everybody hear me okay? All right, so we're live on YouTube. We are being recorded. So let's start our webinar. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our second to the last Watershed Webinar Wednesday. My name is Jennifer Harville, and I'm a Natural Resources Specialist with the Tug Hill Commission in Watertown. Welcome to all of you, especially if this is your first time attending the Black River Watershed Conference. We hope to be joining you all live in person next year, so keep our fingers crossed. Couple of things, you're all muted, but please feel free to use the chat to ask questions at the end of the webinar when the panelists will be available. And second, the webinar is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel and on our website. So the links to our training page and our YouTube page will be provided in the follow-up emails that you get from me and Zoom. So please hang on to those emails for your reference, and I'll have the recordings and presentations uploaded as soon as possible. Your colleagues at the Tug Hill Commission, the Lewis, Hamilton, Herkimer, Jefferson, and Oneida County Soil and Water Conservation Districts and the New York State DEC Region 6 have put this series together for you, and we hope you find it informative and interesting. Today's webinar covers County Soil and Water Conservation District municipal assistance programs, including stormwater pollution prevention, green infrastructure, North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative, stream corridor and floodplain management, forestry management, and more. We will also cover how districts and municipalities can cooperate and coordinate programs through intermunicipal agreements. So, Michelle, take it from here.
Great, thank you, Jen. Our presenter today is Brian Steinmuller, who is the Assistant Director of the Division of Land and Water Resources, Soil and Water Conservation Committee unit of the New York State Department of Ag and Markets. You'll see a lot of things that we talk about are very lengthy and wordy, so I'll try to limit that. As the Assistant Director, Brian is responsible for the daily operations of the State Committee, and State Committee's responsibility is to guide, coordinate, and network the state's 58 county soil and water conservation districts across New York State. The State Committee administers the Ag Environmental Management Planning Program, Implementation Planning, the Agnon Point Source Abatement and Control Program, Climate Resilient Farming, and State Aid to Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Steinmuller started his career in conservation programs and policy with the department and state committee in December of 2001. Brian has a deep passion for agriculture and conservation. His hobbies include anything he gets to do with his family in the great outdoors, including maple sugaring, hiking, and cultivation and planting of trees. In addition, we have panelists today, myself, Christine Watkins from Jefferson County Soil and Water, Caitlin Stewart from Hamilton County Soil and Water, Ryan Cunningham, who is a State Committee Area Environmental Analyst for our area. And did I forget anyone? I don't believe I did. So without further ado, I will have Brian begin his presentation.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you to the Tug Hill Commission, Lewis, Jefferson, Oneida, Herkimer, and Hamilton counties, Soil and Water Districts, and DEC Region 6 for having me today. I think the introduction has already been made, but just again, it feels wrong not to introduce myself, but I am Brian Steinmuller, the Assistant Director for the New York State Soil and Water Conservation Committee. And again, thank you so much for having me today. So little outline for our presentation today. We're going to be talking about the New York State Soil and Water Conservation Committee and Soil and Water Conservation Districts, although Michelle just gave a great introduction to that as well. I do also want to touch on some of the programs that Michelle just mentioned as well, just to give a broader perspective on the programs that the State Committee administers and that Soil and Water Conservation Districts implement and deliver. But we are here to focus on the municipal assistance programs of conservation districts, as we call them. We call them MAP, the Municipal Assistance Programs. So we'll be going through all of the maps, so to speak, for conservation districts across the state, but hone in and look at project case studies in the Black River watershed. And finally, we'll round out the discussion today with information about intermunicipal agreements, which sounds really exciting, I know, but actually is there to help provide a resource and a tool for conservation districts and municipalities to work together. So as Michelle mentioned, the State Soil and Water Conservation Committee is an agency of the state, but we're housed within the Department of Agriculture and Markets. We were established as a state conservation. We were established under state conservation district laws, a statewide communication, networking, and guiding agency. We guide the development and advancement of the state's 58 county soil and water conservation districts. We administer numerous environmental protection fund programming to conservation districts, and really serve as an information and ideas committee working to advance the state's conservation policies. We have 5 voting members who are appointed by the governor, and they serve 5-year terms. We also have 9 advisory agencies and organizations, including state agencies, as well as USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, Cornell University and Cornell Cooperative Extension, SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, and importantly, the New York State Conservation District Employees Association. So as we get together for monthly meetings, we have our voting forum, but we also have our advisory agencies that are there at the table as we're discussing conservation policies and programs. And having the stakeholders engaged from the outset really does, I believe, help to implement programs throughout and later on. The Department of Agriculture and Markets provides staff, administrative support, as well as leadership to the committee. But the committee is staffed by both central office staff, as well as field staff that coordinate conservation districts across the state. Ryan Cunningham, here with me today, is a regional coordinator for the North Country, which encompasses much of the Black River watershed area. The Soil and Water Conservation Committee has numerous subcommittees. We have an Agricultural Technical Advisory Committee, we have an Operations Subcommittee, and we also have a Municipal Assistance Subcommittee. And the Municipal Assistance Subcommittee is really there to provide a forum for information on municipal programs across the state, discuss what makes successful municipal programs, because conservation districts have been working in these spaces for some time, and while others are just starting. So we're able to bring conservation districts together to discuss those programs and the success of those and best practices. We also can set a framework, not only within the conservation district family, but also beyond that, with DEC often at the table, Department of State, and other agencies that have programming that conservation districts can implement and certainly meet mutual goals and objectives. And just a word on soil and water conservation districts really make all of this work happen. County soil and water districts have a very important mission that's carried out with diverse programs that meet local and regional water quality needs. Districts in this region certainly not only deliver on key agricultural conservation programs, but also implement stormwater management projects, stream and floodplain management, hazard mitigation projects, and other key and critical watershed management planning and implementation activities. There are 58 conservation districts in New York State. There's one for every county, including the 5 boroughs of New York City. They form one conservation district, and they are authorized under state law. They are non-regulatory, implementation-based, partnership-driven, and watershed-focused. Okay, we have hours-long presentations on the agriculture environmental management framework, and I'm going to boil it down into one slide today just to give you a broader perspective of the programs conservation districts implement. So the agricultural environmental management is a planning framework that at its core is voluntary incentive-based, really focusing on environmental management, but also farm viability. So we attempt to meet the farm where they're at so that we can customize and tailor plans and projects to meet their operation. It's science-based. The practices that are implemented under the AIM framework are standard practices designed by USDA NRCS and a consortium of scientists across the country. But it's also locally led and delivered. Farmers are very much partners to this effort, along with soil and water conservation districts who lead the effort locally, and they bring together the Natural Resource Conservation Service, Cornell Cooperative Extension, farm service agencies, watershed groups, environmental organizations, as well as agribusinesses. It is prioritized on a watershed scale, just like many of the programs conservation districts deliver. And it is focused on advancing farmers through the AEM tiers. Tier 1 being a basic inventory of the farm and the farm needs. Tier 2 is an environmental assessment that points out where farms could improve their environmental stewardship, but also documents excellent stewardship. Tier 3 is a plan that's customized and tailored for that farm to correct any issues that the Tier 2 assessment might have indicated. Tier 4 is where it all happens, where implementation occurs and where practices are implemented to improve conditions. And then we bring it all around, bring it home with Tier 5, which is an evaluation of the plan or implemented practices. Okay. The Agnon Point Source Abatement and Control Program is as Nichelle mentioned, we have a lot of acronyms and very long titles for programs, but at its core, the Agnon Point program is for water quality protection. It's meant to reduce and or prevent the non-point source contribution from ag activities and watersheds across the state, and really can be looked at as the Tier 4 implementation arm of the AIM planning process. Just as I've mentioned, it utilizes that framework and process, and conservation districts deliver this program at the county and watershed level. Okay, the Climate Resilient Farming Program. The Climate Resilient Farming Program was developed and first implemented in 2015, and it was meant to complement the water quality programs that have been delivered for decades now. But it really focuses on the climate mitigation, so reducing agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, and also increasing farm sequestration capacity in soils and vegetative practices. But most importantly, or I shouldn't say most importantly, but also very importantly, it's there to help farms adapt to a changing climate. So I believe last week talked about weather resilience and improving communities' ability to respond to severe weather. This program helps to do that for the farming sector through water management practices and projects that prevent or reduce the risk of flooding, but also practices and projects that can increase irrigation capacity for farms as well. And finally, the State Aid to Districts program. State Aid to Districts program is a reimbursement program that is delivered through the Environmental Protection Fund, and it provides direct reimbursement and project funding and also performance-based funds to conservation districts. Part A is reimbursement for technical expenses and services up to $60,000. There needs to be a match, so there needs to be $120,000 of eligible technical services and expenses, and the state will match that 50% with a $60,000 reimbursement. Then Part B, project financial assistance. This is capped in law at $6,000, so it's really a mini grant type of opportunity for conservation districts. And Part C, which is funding for the maintenance and enhancement of district operational performance. So as a district continues to meet basic operation, but then also excel and advance and accelerate other aspects of the district, they're able to receive funding through that Part C mechanism that then the district can use to help build capacity or implement projects. This program really is going to be important in all the rest of the projects and programs that we're talking about here, municipal assistance programs, as many Part B and C awards end up funding a lot of the municipal assistance programs and also can match local sources that we'll talk about that are made possible in some cases through the IntraMunicipal Agreements. So let's get right down to it. County soil and water conservation districts, municipal assistance programs, and intermunicipal agreements. As we've talked about, really a lot of the conservation district programs across the state can really be categorized in broad ways. Districts are unique in that they're able to work in both private and public lands. And as such, they would often categorize their programs and projects as landowner assistance, so helping landowners and private homeowners with conservation needs. So we call that the Landowner Assistance Program, or LAP. And then they also can work with municipalities and often do in a host of different ways and reasons. We call that MAP, the Municipal Assistance Program. We also categorize a lot of district educational programs that they're doing in schools and throughout communities as SAP, or the School Assistance Program. So we're going to be talking more about MAP today, but those are just some ways to generally categorize the broad types of projects that districts are involved in. So municipal assistance programs. Again, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but here are some of the broad categories of district programs across the state, and certainly the districts in the Black River watershed are involved in. So looking at streams and flood mitigation, which could include riparian forest buffer implementation and evaluation, stream bank restoration and stabilization, post-flood emergency stream intervention training for municipalities, which is really designed to help municipalities and highway departments understand where to work and where not to work post-flood. In some cases, the level of intervention that happens in a stream post-flood can actually exacerbate aquatic habitat and flooding impacts later on. So that's how that training was designed and developed. Road stream crossing assessment, and we're going to be talking about that today, the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. And that's probably the first and last time I will use the full name. We'll talk about it as NAC. And culvert replacements. Stormwater programs, including training programs such as the 4-hour erosion and sediment control training for contractors, site plan reviews, inspections, etc. And also green infrastructures, often grouped under stormwater programs. MS4 assistance, so under the phase 2 stormwater regulations, municipalities are required to perform certain functions. Districts help those municipalities across the state to do that. And just overall pollution prevention for municipal operations. Critical area seeding, roadside stabilization measures, something districts are doing across the state, and those programs are ramping up as we speak. Invasive species management, again, an area of emphasis, certainly as of late, and I know that throughout the certain Watershed Wednesday webinars, you've talked a lot about invasive species. Districts are involved with their counties and municipalities to do waste management and recycling, a lot of tire recycling programs and other types of hazardous waste, trying to keep them out of the environment. Districts can support municipalities there as well. And finally, open space. So things such as trail maintenance and recreational opportunities, but also forestry and forest management services, kind of round out the broad categories of municipal assistance. So focusing in on the Black River watershed and soil and water districts within, as was already mentioned, within this watershed, there's the Hamilton County Soil and Water District doing great work, Herkimer County Soil and Water District, Oneida County Soil and Water District, Lewis County, and Jefferson County Soil and Water Districts. And it's worth pointing out that although this is a relatively small watershed within New York State, conservation districts are collaborating and coalescing around watershed boundaries throughout the entire state. So we have the Upper Susquehanna Coalition, and we have the Champlain Watershed Improvement Coalition of New York, and many others throughout the state. As we're going to be talking a lot about here today, with municipalities working with districts, joining forces to do so much more, districts themselves are also doing that across the state. And this is a great example of it here, where district projects and programs work together for broader watershed goals. So let's talk about some of those projects here in the Black River watershed. So the next series of slides are going to go through some case studies and projects that have been implemented or being implemented within the Black River watershed. And by no means is what I'm going to be demonstrating here all the details, and certainly I'm not the expert on what districts are doing in the watershed. But many are here today also to elaborate and answer any questions that you might have on these. So starting off with the Lewis County Soil and Water District, they partnered with the village of Constableville to implement a stream bank stabilization project on the Sugar River, which is a tributary to the Black. And this was also done adjacent to their wastewater treatment plant. So the district procured supplies as well as assisted in the completion of a FEMA application. Survey design and permits were also performed by the district, which were necessary for the project. And here we see rock veins and also willow plantings were installed, and the district was reimbursed for their time through the FEMA grant. Great photo there on the left, kind of demonstrating rock veins, and what they do is reduce the erosion along stream banks by redirecting the stream flow toward the center of the stream. So those methods were used here, hardscapes and also planting vegetation to stabilize these banks. Another example, stream bank and floodplain management here is Lewis County, again, partnered with the town of Lowville and the village of Lowville and Lewis County Highway to implement stream bank stabilization practices on the Mill Creek, which is a large tributary to the Black River. Flooding and ice jams had eroded the banks near several structures, jeopardizing a bridge and public water supply lines in the area. The district provided technical assistance, including applying for permits on behalf of private landowners and several local municipalities. And by controlling erosion on Mill Creek here, both above and below the East State Street Bridge, this project was able to protect the tax base and the infrastructure adjacent to the creek. Okay, moving to Hamilton County now, and I am just going to talk very briefly about this project because Caitlin is going to be presenting on this next week for the final Watershed Wednesday webinar. But just to give everybody a preview and plug that presentation, this is an excellent project that was done in partnership with the town of Inlet. And this is a stormwater green infrastructure project near the 4th and 5th Lake Channel, which is a tributary to the Black River. With public access to Arrowhead Park, this also provided an excellent educational opportunity to see this green infrastructure technology at work. So this project included the installation of pervious pavers that encourages the infiltration of stormwater and reduces runoff and flooding in the area. Hamilton County also consulted with Warren County on this project, the Warren County Soil and Water District on the other side of the Adirondacks, for advice on materials to use on this site. So just a great partnership within the county municipalities, but also I hope that you're getting the message here as well, that districts partner with one another and take lessons learned and work together for the advancement of these projects. Wonderful project, and you'll hear more about that if you tune in next Wednesday. Okay, Oneida County Soil and Water District. The Oneida County Soil and Water District has been utilizing the NAC protocols to assess the aquatic passage and flood vulnerabilities and just the overall culvert conditions within their county. And we talked about NAC a couple of times, but I'm just going to take a minute and talk more about what NAC actually is. So the NAC protocol is a network of individuals from agencies and organizations that are focused on improving aquatic connectivity across a 13-state region. The NAC provides standard protocols for road stream crossings, such as culverts and bridges, to assess and score those crossings for fish and wildlife passability, as well as overall culvert condition, and other data that's useful for the evaluation of risks of failure and risks of flooding from undersized or failing culverts. If you recall, I talked about the Municipal Assistance Subcommittee. DEC came to the state committee. They said that there's the standard protocol. We know that districts, municipalities are reviewing culverts and assessing for a host of different vulnerabilities. They came to us and said, we really would like New York State to be a part of this protocol. And through joint discussions and advancement of some resources to help districts get started, many districts now are using this protocol. So here in Oneida County, this protocol was used to assess a failing culvert in the town of Floyd in Boak Road. So this project involved mitigating flooding and improving aquatic passage by replacing the existing undersized culvert on the town's road with a natural stream bed type culvert that incorporates grade controls. The new pipe arch has a cross section, which is cross section area, which is 6.7 times larger than the original culvert. Due to the undersizing of that original culvert and the overall condition, in spring of 2018, a 5-foot diameter hole opened up on the south lane of the road, so creating massive hazards and safety concerns. The outfall of the prior culvert was also an aquatic passage barrier. So, and there was also failing timbers and gabing baskets and surface head walls for the original culvert that were also, like I said, failing. So grade controls consisting of rock or log structures were also installed with this new culvert. And since this structure was placed on a 5% slope, there was grade control inside the culvert as well at spacings of 12-foot intervals. And that was really used to slow down the water inside the culvert and also help promote natural deposition of sediment in the culvert bottom. Okay, hydroseeding in Herkimer County. The district is in its 4th year of offering hydroseeding services to municipalities within Herkimer County. The district works with both municipal and county highway departments. And in 2020 alone, they hydroseeded more than 25 sites throughout 11 towns in the county. The project presented here prevented soil erosion and deposition into Darts Lake, which is located in the Moose River watershed, an important tributary to the Black River. Still staying in Herkimer County here, to reduce roadside bank erosion, roadside hydroseeding was also done throughout the town of Norway to grow herbaceous vegetation. This vegetation will hold the soil in place on the roadside banks, resulting in less erosion. This results in improved water quality due to containing sediment nutrients and not allowing them to flow into ditches and waterways. The erosion control protects the road structure as well. So overall, great projects and a great service that many districts are performing throughout the state. Okay, moving back to Lewis County Soil and Water District here for a minute to talk about invasive species management. As a part of their 2015 Part C District Aid project in Lewis County cooperated with DEC and the county to assist in the management and abatement of aquatic invasive species, completing 14 invasive species disposal stations for boat launches throughout the county. A proven method for management of invasive species is education and outreach. So together with the disposal stations, signage was developed to educate the boating and angling public on best practices to mitigate the spread of invasive species. Okay, Jefferson County Soil and Water District. One of the first districts in the state to have a robust forestry management program. So certainly one to demonstrate here. The Jefferson County Soil and Water District manages 5,500 acres of county forest land. An assessment of these lands show that fern, beech, and striped maple growth is negatively impacting hardwood regeneration. In order to maintain the economic and ecological value of these lands, the district developed 4 trial stands to determine if mechanical and herbicide treatment will encourage growth of valuable tree species and control or eliminate growth of unfavorable species. Competing vegetation consists of plants that interfere with the germination and growth of desirable seedlings by casting dense shade across the forest floor. Some competing plants also provide cover for small mammals that feed on seedlings and tree seeds as well. Competing vegetation can also inhibit diverse and valuable forest native wildflowers, forbs, and herbs. Pictured here on the right, the district is also establishing trials to determine the extent of deer browse on regeneration of desirable tree species. As many foresters have talked about, deer browse is one of the #1 threats to natural regeneration in our forests. So pictured here is a plot that keeps the deer out. And through this project, they will be able to secure valuable data on the impacts of deer to regeneration of our forest resources. Open space and trails. Pictured here, Jefferson County Soil and Water District are connecting recreation trails with bridges and crossings of streams and improving those trails, as well as the Lewis County Soil and Water District, which has conducted environmental assessments on the county rail system and evaluated each trail for necessary maintenance and rehabilitation. A growing number of districts throughout the state are working with counties to maintain and restore multi-use recreational trails throughout most of the county's forest lands. Proper construction of these trails is crucial for forest management and protecting natural resources, but recreation is not the only goal. These projects also ensure proper drainage, minimize erosion, provide access for timber harvest, safe access, and consider wildlife habitat, all while maintaining the natural beauty of the forest. It has been said by conservationists before us that people will not protect what they don't know. So these trails provide access to forests, providing valuable experiences to those who may not have access to forest lands for recreation, rejuvenation, and all the health and environmental benefits that come with these experiences. So our conservation districts are doing great services to their community and counties in forest management, open space, and trail networks. Okay, now all the pretty pictures and all the great case studies have been presented. Now it's time to talk about some legalese and some boring functions of how those projects can get funded. Actually, in my mind, this is very exciting stuff. So IntraMunicipal Agreements. They are a streamlined way for a municipality or county to partner with a local soil and water district to support municipal assistance projects. A soil and water district is not technically considered a municipality. So to make this happen, general municipal law was amended to allow a municipality to enter into intermunicipal agreements with a soil and water district. So essentially for this purpose, define the district as a municipality. This has proven to be an efficient and effective way to carry out joint services and projects. IMAs can lessen administrative burdens by allowing the municipality to enter into a streamlined agreement with a conservation district. IMAs can be easily replicated from municipality to municipality. This replication offers very effective deployment opportunities, particularly when emergent service needs arise, such as those associated with natural disasters, which are happening with all too much frequency. IMAs improve delivery of local, state, and federal policies as well. And IMAs can reduce the cost of individual municipalities having to possess employees with very specialized skill sets, such as those that districts may possess. So prior to this amendment, districts and municipalities only had one option, and that was a separate contract, which can be cumbersome, costly, and time-consuming to produce. Municipalities can develop this simple IMA with conservation districts, and work can begin almost immediately. The New York State Soil and Water Conservation Committee worked to try to get this law changed, and also has examples of IMAs that are currently being used by some municipalities and districts and can be shared with others to simplify the process even further. Okay. And with that, I want to thank everybody for their time, and certainly want to be able to answer any questions that you might have. Here's my contact information. So if we don't get to a question here in the remaining half an hour or so of this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. There's also some great resources on our state committee website, including an interactive map of the New York Soil and Water districts that shows the diversity of what districts are doing in communities to preserve and protect New York's valuable natural resources. A number of the project case studies that I talked about today are listed here, and through this interactive GIS map, I encourage everybody to take a look. There's some really great projects that are happening all across the state. So thank you so much, and I believe we're available to answer any questions. I apologize, I haven't been really monitoring the chat, so hopefully we've inspired some questions.
So funny you mentioned the chat. It would appear that we're having some technical difficulties with the chat, but I want to encourage everybody, your raise hand function should work. If you do raise your hand, we'll allow you to speak, to ask some questions. I know Emily is joining us. Emily, could you raise your hand and let's test this out. Hopefully this works. There she is. Let's see. Hey, Emily. Emily's joining us from New York State DEC's Great Lakes program. Did you have a question or a comment for our panelists?
Jennifer, well, I didn't necessarily have a question or comment. I think it was great to learn about all of the municipal assistance that the soil and water districts can offer. And I hope it helps encourage more use of those services among the Black River watershed.
Me too. Thanks, Emily. I actually have a question. I was listening to Brian talk about the importance of forests and forestry and climate. So I wonder if at the state level or even at the local level for the districts, are you having conversations about the importance of forests and conservation in terms of mitigating climate? Just curious.
Yeah, great question, Jennifer. Yes, indeed. We are. The New York State Climate Leadership Community and Protection Act was passed in July of 2019 and took effect in 2020, January 2020. Through that effort, there are numerous panels that have been created, including the Agriculture and Forestry panel. And that is chaired by Commissioner Ball of the Department of Agriculture. Soil and water conservation districts are represented on that panel, as well as farmers and academics and researchers and foresters. So for the better part of the last year, we have been talking a lot about forest resources and trying to protect what New York has in forest resources, and also enhance those resources to continue to deliver on the sequestration services that forests provide. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions, locking up those emissions in above ground woody biomass, sustainable harvesting of forests and forest resources, using those resources in building structures, and the building envelope then continues to sequester that carbon as long as that building is maintained. So a lot of effort is going into that at the state level. And during that, I was so heartened to learn and be a part of and listen to a whole like Forestry 101 track at the Water Quality Symposium this past year. So conservation districts are working together to extend their knowledge. Jefferson County being one of the first in the state to have a robust forest service program, and I just see that's growing across the state. And it's great to see districts being a part of that and working with DC, working with the Department of Agriculture. I see those programs growing.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Nichelle?
I was just wondering, Brian, if you could elaborate on, you see a lot of these projects, if you could elaborate on the district's abilities to utilize public equipment on private properties.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question, and also certainly want to defer to the districts on the call today and Ryan as well if they have anything to add. But because of district's unique nature to be able to work on private lands with public resources, whether it's resources and equipment owned by the district or through an agreement with the DPWs or transportation departments, that really provides a valuable service that otherwise wouldn't be there. I believe that those in IMA, such as what I talked about, could be put into place so that that type of equipment can be utilized on private lands. In some cases, districts are investing in their own equipment and then providing it to municipalities as well to kind of augment the resources that are available. And we see that with tub grinders, for example, post flood, being able to deploy those resources to where they're needed across the state. So I don't know if I talked about the specific mechanics of it, but those are some examples of what's being done.
And Brian, if I may augment on what you said, a local case study in Hamilton County, we partnered with a local landowner and the Village of Speculator DPW, our Department of Public Works. and there was a section of land that was duly owned by the village as well as a private landowner. During the 2019 Halloween storm, the Marion Brook was severely undercut. The water was literally flowing over the road. It surpassed the culvert, hopped the road, property was damaged, fish habitat was filled in, and our district's capacity to work on both private and public land really helped to move this stabilization project forward. We were able to obtain a landowner agreement that allowed our district to work on this private property with an excavator and an excellent operator that was supplied by our Village of Speculator Department of Public Works. We also partnered with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They supplied willow wattles, not like the turkey wattle, but think big bundles of willow branches. And these were buried along the stream bank, and they will provide chutes to help hold all of that soil in. So because our conservation district has the ability to work on private property, we were really able to fully address the scope of this project that spanned a portion of village property as well as private property. So we were able to really get a lot of bang for our buck because of the legislation that's in place that allows our district staff to work on both public and private property.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now that just because you're talking about partnerships, I'd also just like to plug just for next week's our final webinar. I'll let Caitlin talk about her presentation, but just to mention too, Herkimer County partnered with a local BOCES on a stream bank stabilization project. So not only, IMAs, but also partnering like you're talking about with NRCS and local BOCES classes and all sorts of partnerships, doing more with less. It's very exciting. So.
Absolutely, Jennifer, really great point. And that NRCS connection is vital, and it's historic. Conservation districts were put on this earth with what was then known as the Soil Erosion Service and became the Soil Conservation Service as a federal entity that brought resources to local communities and farmers. The districts were the local connection, and that continues today in so many ways, and may look a little bit different in how the federal agencies and the districts cooperate with one another. But districts are vital to implementing federal programs and policies as well. I see that I'm starting to freeze up there on the screen, so hopefully you're all still at least able to hear me.
We are that.
Yeah.
Are there any more attendees that would like to ask a question of Brian or Ryan or any of the panelists today? Don't be shy, put your hand up. We'll have a conversation if you'd like. Or any of the panelists have anything else to add? Yeah, that's for. And if not, I would like to thank Brian, Ryan, Caitlin, Nichelle, Christine for caring about our watershed, for your detail and putting this presentation together. And to everybody joining. Oh, wait, we have a Tim Hunt before I start. Go ahead, Tim.
I was typing, but I wasn't fast enough. We got a press release today that the Biden administration has proposed new federal clean water regulations. And I'm just curious how much you guys are aware of that and whether you think that's going to impact our ability to get stream permits and what that's going to look like.
So it looks like I'm having problems with my video, but hopefully you can hear me okay. I haven't seen that yet, but certainly, there I am. Okay. Certainly regulations that are well intended to protect water resources in some cases because of the capacity of those permitting agencies such as DEC in our case, it can have an opposite effect. So, a lot of conservation districts, and we'd love to see even more, have general permit authority. So they work with DEC and they can extend those permits off to get approval to do this work. And, certainly, well-intended efforts in some cases could actually prohibit some of that work from getting done effectively and efficiently. And a lot of times the work is certainly needed and has to be done within a certain time frame. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. And I thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Brian, you might, maybe you want to speak a little bit to, there's currently a bill underway in the state legislature that is adding right now anything that's a class C, T and above is regulated. C or T being the trout. The whole bill, the purpose of it is to add class C, which, maybe you could speak to a little bit more, Brian.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And that was actually kind of the example that I was drawing from my previous response, having not seen the federal press release, but again, intended to connect stream resources. So class A and B and CT streams with smaller types of tributaries that are designated as class C, so that all of them, including class C, would have those stream protections. This is not new. It's something that has been proposed as a part of the 2100 Commission report, which was put together post Irene, Lee, and Sandy, Hurricanes Irene, Lee, and Hurricane Sandy in 2011 and 12. And certainly has been promoted as a way to help with aquatic habitats and as a way to protect our water resources, which are more and more vulnerable from extreme weather events and flooding. We understand that the added permit requirements to that, which I think would be somewhere around 64,000 miles of stream that otherwise were not in the designation, now would be, may have that unintended consequence of slowing projects down or not allowing them to happen at all because of the time it would take to secure those permits. So a lot of the stream bank restoration projects and even some of the connectivity projects like culvert replacements and bridges could be held up by the time it would take to secure those permits. So that was introduced last year. And again this year as well. So those are some of the downsides, some of the negatives to that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other thoughts or comments for our panelists?
Jennifer, I have one more comment for everyone. Brian, wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. I want to encourage everyone to visit the website that Brian has listed on his last slide. As Brian mentioned, the story maps are amazing. They give wonderful snapshots about projects that districts have done across the state, really diverse, boots on the ground projects, and the state committee has done a fabulous job in presenting that. So be sure you check out the story maps. Also, the state committee puts out a fantastic annual report that compiles soil and water conservation district projects. So for more information about what you've heard today, please visit the state committee website. They do a great job with really presenting what we do on the conservation district level. So just want to thank Brian for the excellent resources and for representing districts so well.
Oh, well, thank you, Caitlin. Our 2020 report is in the final stages of development and should be out very soon.
Along those lines, Brian, would you be able to send a PDF of your presentation that we can share out, and like that, then the folks will have you that your email and your contact info?
Absolutely. Be
Fantastic.
happy to.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin, while you have the floor, let's talk about next week.
Absolutely. So next Wednesday, our Soil and Water Conservation District, the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District, will give a presentation about what Brian highlighted today. We worked with many partners, including the Town of Inlet Department of Public Works, our conservation district, the state committee who provided funding, the Finger Lakes Lake Ontario watershed for providing funding, again, highlighting what Brian mentioned about the importance of having our partners come together to get these projects on the ground. There was a stormwater pollution issue at the Town of Inlet Arrowheads Park. And the park is located right along the connector for the 5th and 4th lakes, and water carrying pollutants, car waste, pet waste, salt would flush right into that tributary. And thanks to these partnerships, we were able to put in some permeable pavers to soak up all of that pollution before it ever enters the stream. And the Town of Inlet has had such a great success story. They want to put these pavers everywhere. So next week, we will detail the exact process and how we established these partnerships, the process of installing these pavers, and get into the nitty-gritty of the percentages of pollution that we're able to prevent from entering our water bodies. And again, that's in our Black River watershed in the northern part of Hamilton County. So please join us at that time.
And I will say too, Arrowhead Park is one of our Black River watershed annual trash bash cleanup sites. So I'd like to give a shout out to the Hataranda 4-H Club for taking the time every fall to go out and clean up trash and help us document what's littering the waterways. So thank you to them. All right. So thanks again to everybody for your attention to detail, for your questions, for the good conversations. There's, like I said, there's going to be links in your follow-up emails from me, so please pay attention. Also, there's a spot for feedback if you want to provide feedback to us. We read every comment, and hopefully we'll see you all in person next year. If not, we'll see you next week for Caitlin's and for Herkimer County's presentation. Same time, same place. So
Thank you,
everyone.
Brian. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Sure.
Michelle and Jennifer, great work today.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to our chat, but it's
Yeah.
just par for the course, because after I thought we had it all worked out yesterday, but I think, hand raising works okay too.
Great job troubleshooting. I feel like everyone who needed to say something was able to with the hand raising option.
So yeah. And if we get any follow-up, we'll pass it along, but I think it was a good discussion. Yeah, let's do this again next week. Caitlin, do you want to have a brief get together before Wednesday?
That would be excellent. I've turned off my phone. Jennifer, can I email you maybe a good time?
Yep. And then
Beautiful.
I'll send something to Herkimer County as well. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. I'll get you my presentation before that. I need to make it, but I'll definitely get that to you before next Wednesday.
Sounds great.
And happy birthday, Grandma.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. 100 years young. Holy cow.
And 100 more.
Yeah.
Yes, probably.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
We'll see you next Wednesday.
Yep.